The great chamber fell silent when the human woman stood up. Ambassador Lee Yuna was small compared to most aliens in the room. The Lorith towered over her like giants. The tree-like Velkan species reached the ceiling. Even the insect-like Melkari were taller, but when she spoke, her voice filled every corner of the massive hall. "No," she said. "Just one word." High Arbiter Velkan, the ancient leader of the Galactic Council, leaned forward. His bark-covered face showed confusion. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no young species had ever refused the Council's peace offer. It simply did not happen. "Perhaps you did not understand," Velkan said slowly. His voice was like wind through old branches. "We offer you territorial compensation. The Lorith Empire will pay significant reparations. The incident at your colony will be officially recorded and condemned." "This is a generous offer, Ambassador." Leuna did not blink. "The incident," she repeated. "You call it an incident. 400,000 people died on New Busan. Children burned in their schools. Families were vaporized in their homes. The Lorith fleet arrived without warning and turned our colony into ash. That is not an incident, High Arbiter. That is genocide." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Representatives from 12 species watched with growing unease. They had seen wars before. They had mediated conflicts between powerful empires. But there was something different about the humans. Something in their eyes that the other species could not understand. Lord Commander Dothan of the Lorith Empire laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with gray-scaled skin and 4 arms. His military uniform displayed dozens of medals from countless victories. "Genocide," Dothan said with amusement. "We simply removed a pest infestation from a planet we claimed. Your species has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. You are children playing in a galaxy of adults. Accept the Council's generous offer and return to your small corner of space. Be grateful we allow you to exist at all." The chamber waited for the human ambassador to crumble. Every other young species would have accepted such terms. Survival was more important than pride. Everyone knew this basic truth of galactic politics. But Lee Yuna smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that made several alien representatives feel suddenly cold. "Lord Commander," she said calmly, 3 months ago, your fleet outnumbered ours 5-1. Today, that number is 3-1. In another 3 months, we will be equal. And then," she paused, "then we will come for you." Dothan's laughter died. "You threaten us? Your tiny fleet against the might of the Lorath Empire?" "I do not threaten, Lee," Yuna replied. "I promise. You killed 400,000 of our people. We remember every single name. We have carved them into the walls of our ships. Our soldiers whisper them before battle. You wanted to teach humanity fear. Instead, you taught us hate." Far away, aboard the battleship Indomitable, Admiral Park Tae-ho watched the transmission in silence. He was 53 years old, with gray hair and a face marked by decades of service. 3 years ago, he had been a peacetime officer, more familiar with diplomatic escorts than combat. Then New Busan happened. His daughter had been on New Busan. She was 24 years old, a teacher at a primary school in the colony's capital. Her name was Park Sumin. She had called him the morning of the attack, excited about a class trip she was planning. The transmission cut off mid-sentence when the Loroth weapons hit. They never found her body. There was nothing left to find. Admiral Park had not smiled since that day. He did not speak of his daughter. He did not need to. Every officer in the fleet knew. Every soldier understood. They were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting because some things could not be forgiven. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "the Council has officially requested that we stand down and accept the peace terms." Park Tae-ho looked at the young officer. "What is your name, Lieutenant?" "Kong Mina, sir." "Do you have family?" "Lieutenant Kong?" "Yes, sir." "My younger brother was on New Busan. He was 12 years old." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Signal all ships. The 7th Fleet will advance to Sector 47. We are entering Lorth space." Lieutenant Kong Mina did not hesitate. "Yes, sir." Back in the council chamber, High Arbiter Velkin raised his ancient hands, calling for order. Ambassador Lee, please reconsider. War benefits no one. The Lorith have agreed to our terms. Surely this is enough. Enough. Lee Yuna turned to face the entire council. Let me tell you what is enough. When the Lorith executed our civilians, they broadcast it across their empire as entertainment. They laughed as our children screamed. They celebrated as our families burned. Your peace offer asks us to accept payment for our dead, shake hands with their murderers, and pretend it never happened. She shook her head. That will never be enough. Then what do you want? Velkan asked desperately. Name your terms. What will end this war? Leona was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke words that would echo across the galaxy for generations. We do not want your peace, she said. We want them to understand. We want them to feel the weight of what they did. We want them to remember. Until that day comes, there will be no peace. There will only be war. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the Galactic Council erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Ancient alliances trembled, and somewhere in the void of space, human warships began their long journey toward Lorith territory. The galaxy had never seen anything like humanity before. They were about to learn what happened when you wounded a species that refused to forget. The war had only just begun. 3 months passed, and the galaxy watched in disbelief. The humans were winning. No one understood how it was possible. The Lorith Empire had dominated their region of space for over 1,000 years. Their fleet was massive. Their technology was advanced. Their soldiers were bred for war. Yet somehow, the tiny human fleet continued to push forward, winning battle after battle against impossible odds. Captain Kong Mina stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the Silent Thunder. She was only 28 years old, but she had already earned a reputation that made Lorith commanders nervous. They called her the Ghost. She appeared where no enemy should be, struck hard, and vanished before they could respond. Captain, her sensor officer reported, Lorith's shipyard confirmed ahead. 6 defense platforms, 12 patrol vessels, 1 battlecruiser. Kung Mina studied the tactical display. Her squadron had only 4 destroyers. By any reasonable calculation, this attack was suicide. All ships, she said calmly, execute attack pattern -7. We go in fast, hit the construction bays, and get out before the battlecruiser can respond. Her crew did not question the order. They had followed her into impossible situations before. They had always survived. More importantly, they had always won. The 4 destroyers shot forward like arrows. The Lorith defense platforms opened fire, but the human ships were too fast, too unpredictable. They did not fly in straight lines like Loroth vessels. They twisted and spun, using every asteroid and piece of debris as cover. Captain Kang Mina's ship reached the shipyard first. Her weapons officer fired a full spread of missiles into the construction bays. Explosions bloomed across the massive structure. 3 half-built warships died before they were ever completed. Broadcast on all frequencies, Kang Mina ordered. For New Busan, we remember every name. The message would reach Lorith's civilians, soldiers, and commanders across the sector. It would remind them why the humans were fighting. It would make them afraid. The squadron escaped before the battlecruiser could catch them. They had destroyed a shipyard, killed hundreds of Lorath personnel, and lost nothing. Another impossible victory. Far from the battle, the Galactic Council was in crisis. Counselor Brivon of the Melkari paced nervously in his private chamber. The Melkari were merchants, not warriors. This war was destroying trade routes they had used for centuries. Their economy was suffering. This cannot continue, he muttered to his aide. The humans must be made to see reason. He arranged a secret meeting with Ambassador Lee Yuna. They met on a neutral station, away from the eyes of the council, Ambassador Brivon said, his insect-like mandibles clicking with anxiety. I come with a new offer. Not from the council. From a coalition of species who want this war to end. Lee Yuna sat across from him, her expression unreadable. I am listening. Full acknowledgement of the massacre, Brivon said quickly. Not an incident. Not a miscommunication. The Lorith will publicly admit they committed genocide. They will be condemned by every species in the galaxy. Heavy reparations will be paid directly to the families of victims. He leaned forward. This is unprecedented, Ambassador. No species has ever been forced to admit such shame. Surely this is what you wanted. Liuna was quiet for a long time. Then she shook her head. Acknowledgement means nothing if the criminals walk free, she said. The officers who gave the order to attack New Busan are still commanding Lorith fleets. The soldiers who pulled the triggers are still celebrating their victory. Words on paper do not equal justice. Brivon's mandibles clicked faster. What more can we offer? You are asking for the impossible. I am asking for what is right, Liuna replied simply. My government will not accept this offer. Back on Earth, Prime Minister Jung Nari addressed the United Earth Assembly. She was a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes that had grown hard over the past months. The Melkari Coalition has offered us acknowledgement and reparations, she announced. After consultation with our military commanders and civilian representatives, we have decided unanimously to refuse. The assembly chamber erupted in applause. Outside, crowds gathered in the streets of every major city. They chanted the names of New Bisan's dead. They held pictures of lost family members. 3 months of war had not weakened human resolve. It had only made it stronger. Aboard a research vessel hidden in deep space, Dr. Xin Huan worked without sleep. He was 60 years old, the most brilliant physicist humanity had ever produced. Before the war, he had studied theoretical energy systems. Now, he built weapons. Project Horizon is nearly complete, he reported to Admiral Park Tae-ho via secure transmission. When finished, it will be capable of destroying an entire planet in a single shot. Admiral Park stared at the data on his screen. Such power was terrifying. It would make humanity equal to any empire in the galaxy.
How long?
He asked. 3 more months, Admiral. Keep it secret. Tell no one outside your team. When it is ready, I will decide how to use it. Dr. Xinhuan hesitated. Admiral, with respect, I must ask. If we build this weapon, will we actually use it? Will we destroy billions of lives for revenge? Park Tae-ho did not answer immediately. He thought of his daughter. He thought of the 400,000 dead. He thought of the recordings he had seen. Lorith soldiers laughing as New Busan burned. I do not know, he finally said. But they do not know either. And their uncertainty is our greatest weapon. The war continued. Human ships pushed deeper into Lorith territory. Every victory was broadcast across the galaxy. Every battle ended with the same message. For New Busan, we remember every name. The Lorith began to understand something that the other species had not yet grasped. The humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to make sure the Laruth never forgot what they had done, and that made them more dangerous than any enemy the galaxy had ever seen. 6 months into the war, the Galactic Council was breaking apart. Species that had been allies for centuries now argued bitterly in the Great Chamber. Some wanted to support the Lorith Empire and restore order by force. Others secretly sent messages of support to humanity. Ancient agreements were forgotten. Trust evaporated like water in the void of space. High Arbiter Velkon watched it all with growing despair. He had served the Council for 900 years. He had mediated dozens of conflicts. He had always found a way to preserve peace. But the humans were different. They did not want compromise. They wanted something he could not understand. They're tearing us apart, he said to his closest advisors. Not with weapons. With their stubbornness. Every species is choosing sides. If this continues, the Council itself will collapse. On the Lorith homeworld, Emperor Gathon summoned his military commanders. The war was not going well. Human tactics were unpredictable and brutal. Their soldiers fought with a fury that Lorith warriors could not match. Worst of all, human propaganda was working. Other species were starting to look at the Loroth with disgust instead of respect. We must end this war, the Emperor declared. Our economy is suffering. Our reputation is damaged. Find a way to make the humans stop. Lord Commander Dothan, who had laughed at the humans 6 months ago, was no longer laughing. He had lost 3 major battles to Admiral Park Teho. His confidence was shattered. They will not accept peace, Dothan said quietly. We have offered them everything, and offered them blood, the Emperor replied coldly. Send them the officers who ordered the attack on their colony. Let the humans have their justice. The third peace offer arrived on Earth 3 days later. A Lorith ambassador, speaking with forced humility, announced that the Empire would surrender the officers responsible for the New Busan massacre. These criminals would be handed over to human custody for trial and punishment. In exchange, humanity would end the war immediately. Prime Minister Zhang Nari considered the offer carefully. She called a meeting with her top advisors. Vice Admiral Oseok, Admiral Park's second-in-command, argued strongly for acceptance. This is what we asked for, Oseok said. Justice. The criminals who killed our people will face punishment. We can finally have peace. But Admiral Park Teho shook his head slowly. Something is wrong. The Lorith do not surrender their own people. They consider it shameful. This offer is too convenient. What are you suggesting? Prime Minister Zhang asked. Let me investigate before we respond. Park Teho sent his best intelligence officers into Loroth space. They bribed officials, intercepted communications, and gathered information from every source available. What they discovered was exactly what the Admiral had suspected. The officers are already dead, Park reported to the Prime Minister. The Lorith executed them in secret 2 weeks ago. They planned to hand over corpses and claim the prisoners died during transport. It was a trick. They never intended to give us real justice. Zhang Nara's face hardened. Inform the council. Refuse the offer. The announcement shocked the galaxy. Ambassador Li Yuna presented the evidence to the full council. The Lorith ambassador tried to deny it, but the proof was overwhelming. The third peace offer was a lie. This is what the Lorith think of peace, Li Yuna said, her voice cold with anger. Deception, manipulation. They believe they can trick us into silence. They are wrong. Council chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had supported the Lorith now turned away in disgust. The Empire's reputation, already damaged, collapsed completely. After the session ended, Ambassador Thren of the Vaynor approached Li Yuna. The Vaynor were a warrior species, tall and muscular, with 4 arms and dark purple skin. They had built their civilization on concepts of honor and combat. For centuries they had watched other species with bored contempt. But they were not bored now. Your species is either brave or insane, Thren said. Perhaps both. Li Yuna met his gaze without flinching. We are neither. We are simply unwilling to forget. Thren studied her for a long moment. The Lorith tried to destroy you. Any other species would have surrendered or been exterminated. Instead, you are winning. You reject every peace offer. You demand something that cannot be given. He paused. What is it you truly want, Ambassador? Understanding, Li Yuna replied. We want them to understand what they did, not just admit it, not just pay for it. We want them to feel the weight of 400,000 souls. Until they do, there can be no peace. Thren was silent. Then, slowly, he nodded. We are watching, he said, with great interest. That night, High Arbiter Velkin called an emergency council session. Several species demanded that humanity be sanctioned for refusing peace. They argued that the humans were prolonging the war unnecessarily. They claimed humanity was as dangerous as the Lorith. The vote was held. The motion to sanction humanity failed. No species wanted to make enemies of the people who refused to break. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Park Teho received the news. He allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. Then he turned to his tactical display. The Lorith core systems were only weeks away. Admiral Captain Kang Mina reported, Our fleet is ready to advance. We await your orders. Park Teho thought of his daughter. He thought of New Busan. He thought of the weapon that Dr. Xinhuan was building in secret. We move forward, he said quietly. We do not stop until they remember.
Ow.
The war continued, and the galaxy continued to watch. Fascinated and terrified by the species that would not surrender, would not forgive, and would not forget. 10 months into the war, the Lorith Empire was dying. Human fleets had pushed deep into their core territories. Trade routes were severed. Colonies were isolated. The economy collapsed. Food shortages spread across dozens of worlds. Citizens who had once celebrated the massacre of New Busan now cursed their leaders for starting a war they could not win. Empress Volthon had taken power after her husband's death. 2 months earlier, Emperor Gethong had suffered a heart attack during a military briefing when he learned that ML Park, Teho, had destroyed the Empire's largest military base. The stress of losing to an inferior species had literally killed him. Now Volthon faced an impossible choice. She could continue the war and watch her civilization crumble, or she could do something no Lorith leader had ever done. She could surrender completely. She chose survival. A personal envoy arrived on Earth, carrying a message directly from the Empress. The fourth peace offer was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Lorith Empire offered unconditional surrender. They would accept any terms humanity demanded. Disarmament, massive reparations, territory, war crime trials, complete humiliation. "We will give you everything," the envoy said, trembling before the United Earth's assembly. "Please, just end this war." The galaxy held its breath. Surely humanity would accept. They had won. The mighty Lorith Empire was begging on its knees. What more could anyone want? Prime Minister Zhang Nari stood before her people. Billions watched the broadcast across human space. Millions more from other species watched through intercepted signals. "The Lorith offer us total surrender," she said. "They will give us anything we demand." Many would say this is the ultimate victory. Many would say we should accept and rebuild. She paused. But victory was never our goal. Justice was never just about punishment. She looked directly into the camera. "We refuse." Silence. Then confusion. Then chaos. The Galactic Council fell into complete turmoil. Representatives shouted accusations at each other. Some called the humans monsters. Others called them insane. The Vayner representative, Ambassador Thren, said nothing. He simply watched with growing fascination. High Arbiter Velkon contacted Ambassador Li Yuna desperately. "What more can you possibly want? They have offered you everything. You have won." "We have won nothing," Li Yuna replied calmly. "Surrender is not justice. Punishment is not understanding. The Lorith are only surrendering because they are losing. They do not feel guilt. They do not feel shame. They only feel fear." She shook her head. "Fear is not enough. Fear fades. We want something that will last forever." "What?" Velkon demanded. "What will last forever?" "Memory," Li Yuna said simply. "We want them to remember." In the depths of space, Lieutenant Yunde prepared for a mission that everyone knew was suicide. He was 23 years old. His entire squadron had died in a battle 2 weeks ago. He was the only survivor, pulled from the wreckage of his fighter by a rescue team that arrived too late to save. Anyone else? He should have been recovering in a medical bay. Instead, he volunteered to lead a new squadron on an attack against the Lorith home fleet. "You understand the odds," Admiral Park Teho said to him privately. "Yes." "Admiral, you understand you will probably not survive." "Yes, Admiral." "Then why volunteer?" Lieutenant Yunde was quiet for a moment. "My parents were on New Busan, my sister too. She was 16. She wanted to be a doctor." He met the Admiral's eyes. "I do not fight because I want to live. I fight because they did not get to live. I fight so their deaths meant something." Admiral Park Teho placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Then go. Make it mean something." The attack was legendary. 12 human fighters against 300 Lorath warships defending their homeworld. It should have been a slaughter. Instead, Lieutenant Yunde led his squadron through gaps in the enemy formation that should not have existed. They struck the Lorith flagship, crippling its engines. They destroyed 6 cruisers. They damaged a dozen more. 11 pilots died. Lieutenant Yunde survived, his fighter barely holding together, broadcasting one final message as he limped back to friendly space. For New Busan, for everyone who cannot fight, we remember. The message spread across the galaxy. Other species watched recordings of the battle over and over. They could not believe what they were seeing. 12 ships against 300. It was impossible. It was insane. It was human. Aboard the research vessel Horizon, Dr. Shin Huan completed his work. The weapon was ready. One shot could destroy a planet completely. He transmitted the final report to Admiral Park Tae-ho. Project Horizon is operational, Admiral. On your order, we can end this war in seconds. Park Tae-ho stared at the specifications. He imagined the Lorith homeworld burning. Billions of civilians dead. Children who had nothing to do with New Busan vaporized in an instant. His daughter had been innocent too? Admiral? Dr. Shin Huan prompted. What are your orders? Park Tae-ho closed his eyes. He saw his daughter's face. He heard her voice, excited about her class trip, cut off mid-sentence by Lorith's weapons. Stand by, he said finally. We will not use this weapon yet. Perhaps we will never use it. Then why did we build it? Because sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one you choose not to fire. Park Tae-ho opened his eyes. Prepare the fleet. We moved to the Lorith homeworld. Not to destroy, to make them understand. The final stage of the war was about to begin. And the galaxy still did not understand what humanity truly wanted. They would learn soon. 1 year after the war began, the human fleet arrived at the Lorith homeworld. Thousands of warships filled the sky, blocking out the stars. On the planet below, billions of Lorith looked up in terror. They had heard stories of human brutality. They had seen recordings of impossible battles. They knew they were about to die. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, staring at the blue and green world on his view screen. It was beautiful. Forests covered the northern continents. Oceans sparkled in the sunlight. Cities glowed with the lights of civilization. 400,000 humans had once looked up at a similar sky on New Busan. Then the Lorith fleet arrived, and everything burned. Admiral Captain Kong Mina said softly, the fleet is in position. All weapons are armed. Project Horizon is ready to fire on your command. One word. That was all it would take. One word, and the Lorith civilization would cease to exist. Every man, woman, and child on that planet would die. Justice would be served. Revenge would be complete. Park Tae-ho said nothing. On the planet's surface, Empress Volthan broadcast a desperate plea across all frequencies. Her voice was transmitted to every ship in the human fleet, to the Galactic Council, to every species watching this moment.
Humans,
she said, her voice trembling. We surrender. We have already surrendered. What more do you want from us? Do you want us to beg? We will beg. Do you want us to suffer? We are suffering. Our children cry themselves to sleep, afraid that tomorrow will never come. Our people starve while we spend everything on a war we cannot win. Her voice broke. Please, tell us what you want. We will give you anything. Just tell us what will end this. Silence. Then Ambassador Lee Yuna's voice transmitted across the same frequencies. She spoke from the council chamber on Orvena, where representatives of every species watched in breathless anticipation. We never wanted your surrender, Lee Yuna said. We never wanted your territory. We never wanted your wealth. We refused every peace offer because none of them gave us what we truly needed. Then what? Empress Volthan cried. What do you need? We need you to understand. Lee Yuna's image appeared on screens across the galaxy. She held a small device in her hands. On New Busan, 400,000 humans died. They were not soldiers. They were not threats. They were families, teachers, children, farmers, doctors, artists. They had dreams. They had hopes. They had names. She pressed a button on the device. A voice began to speak. An old woman's voice, tired and full of grief. My grandson's name was Park Jin. He was 7 years old. He loved to draw pictures of spaceships. He wanted to be an explorer when he grew up. Another voice followed. A young man, struggling not to cry. My wife was Kim Yen. She was pregnant with our first child. We were going to name her Hannah. They never got to meet each other. More voices. One after another. Hundreds. Thousands. Each one speaking a name. Sharing a memory, describing a person who had once lived and laughed and loved. This recording contains every name, Liuna said. Every single person who died on New Busan, their families recorded messages for them. It takes 7 hours to play in full. The recording continued to broadcast. Across the galaxy, aliens stopped what they were doing and listened. The Lorith on their homeworld heard the voices of those they had killed. Children heard the names of other children their age. Parents heard about families just like their own. For 7 hours, the galaxy listened when it finally ended. Admiral Park Tae-ho spoke for the first time. We are not you, he said, his voice calm and steady. We could destroy your world. We have the power. Many would say you deserve it, he paused. But if we killed your children to avenge ours, we would become exactly what we hate. We would become murderers of the innocent. We will not let your crime transform us into criminals. He looked at the planet below. You will build a memorial on your homeworld. Every name from New Busan will be carved into stone. You will teach your children what happened. You will tell them the truth, not propaganda, not excuses. The truth. And every year on the anniversary of the massacre, your people will gather at that memorial and remember. Empress Voltan wept openly. Yes, she whispered, we will remember. This is not a treaty, Admiral Park continued. This is a covenant. Break it, and we will return. The weapon that could have destroyed your world today will still exist tomorrow. We chose not to use it. Do not make us regret that choice. The war ended, not with fire, not with conquest. With memory, in the years that followed, everything changed. The Galactic Council reformed around new principles. The Lorith built their memorial. A massive structure in their capital city with 400,000 names carved into black stone. Every year, millions gathered there to remember. Other species studied humanity with new eyes. The Vayner wrote histories praising human resolve. The Melkari adjusted their trade policies to favor Earth. Even species that had once dismissed humans as a primitive now treated them with deep respect, Ambassador. Thren of the Vayner eventually wrote a historical account, titled The Species That Remembered. He spent decades researching human culture, interviewing survivors, studying their art and literature. His book became required reading across the galaxy. The final line read, they could have burned everything. They had every reason to choose destruction. Instead, they made us understand. That is why we fear them. That is why we respect them. That is why we will never forget. On the ruins of New Busan, a different memorial was built. Humanity restored a small portion of the colony, not for living, but for remembering. At its center stood a simple garden with 400,000 small stone markers, each bearing a single name. Admiral Park Tae-ho visited on the first anniversary of the war's end. He was alone. His uniform was simple, without medals or decorations. He walked slowly through the garden until he found one marker among thousands, Park Sumin. Beloved daughter, remembered forever, he knelt beside it and placed a small flower on the stone. Captain Kong Mina stood at the garden's edge, watching in silence. She did not approach. Some moments were too sacred to interrupt. The sun set over New Busan, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Admiral Park Tae-ho stayed until the stars came out. The same stars his daughter had once dreamed of exploring. We remembered, he whispered. All of us. The whole galaxy remembers now. The wind carried his words across the garden, past the 400,000 markers, into the night sky, and out into the universe where humanity had carved its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as a species that refused to let the dead be forgotten, and the galaxy would never forget them.